Welcome to Tech Startup Stories, hosted by Natalie Binns. This is the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of the B2B startup world.
Hi, I'm Natalie Binns, and after many years as a marketing leader in the B2B SaaS industry, I set up Hey Gabby to support startups and scale-ups with their go-to-market and growth needs. I work with so many great founders, and that's led me to want to hear their stories and share them with others. And that's why I set up this podcast. So let's get into this week's podcast.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's podcast. This week, I'm getting to speak with Dr. Georgia Fleet, and she is the CEO and founder of Zonova Tech. Welcome to the show. Dr. Georgia, I am so excited to be speaking with you today. You've had what an incredible few months, and 6 weeks ago, you announced your incredible seed raise. So I'd love to hear from you. Tell us what happened. Tell us about that. Tell us everything.
Thank you so much. No, it's an absolute pleasure to be here. And yeah, thank you so much for taking the time. I really love speaking about our journey, especially as a female founder in Medtech. So yeah, really excited to be able to share. And yeah, so thank you so much. It has been an absolute whirlwind. And I think, fundraising in general is just tough, especially in this market, especially as a female founder, and then especially in Medtech as well, which is not the most sexy of sectors. But yeah, so for us, it actually started last year. I have no idea what the stats are in the terms of like the length of an average fundraiser right now, but we we were definitely on the longer side. But we also did it in stages as well, which I think really worked for us. So we had stage one that went through advanced subscription agreements, and that was absolute game changer for us because it allowed us to make crucial hires earlier than actually closing the full raise, to help us get to that next step a little bit quicker. And then what we did was towards the end of the financial year, sort of February and March, we then closed, I suppose, part one with Angel Academy as lead. Angel Academy have been one of our earliest supporters right from the beginning. I think I had my first phone call with them in 2023. So, really from, the inception of Zonova. And so, yeah, they led the close of the first round. And then we did a secondary close in May, and that was led by Athena Capital, obviously female-founded medtech fund. And so, we're absolutely, we're just so happy with the way that it's all turned out. Especially given the market and the context that we're operating in, and what that means for us and the company. And the platform that gives us as well to shout about hospital-acquired infections and the work that we're doing to prevent them is really, really special to us.
Amazing. And that journey, I think it varies from industry to industry, but tell us a little bit more about what it is that you guys specialize in. What do you actually focus on? And that will give us a bit more of a sense as to how incredible this raise is.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're in the realm of antimicrobial materials. So actually taking a step back from that, scrap that. I'm going to start from the beginning. So you've got a 1 in 10 chance of getting an infection when you go into hospital, right? So these are infections that you get simply from being in the hospital. They're not infections that you go in with. So 1 in 10 people will get an infection as a result of being in hospital. And the literature says that about 2/3, 70% of those are directly linked back to medical devices. So what I mean by medical devices is anything that's like a kind of plastic tube, if you will, kind of going in and out of the body. And things like orthopedic implants, like a hip implant, a knee implant, anything that's sitting inside the body that shouldn't be there, that's either delivering healthcare or supporting that healthcare. So IV lines, central lines, urinary catheters, all of that stuff. And the way that you get infections from those is that actually bacteria just loves to grow on surfaces. I kind of when I explain this to people, I kind of give the analogy of like, if you've got like a really dirty sink or shower and you get like kind of grime growing on it, I suppose that is like bacterial biofilm. Bacteria just loves a surface, and it's just really rotten luck that actually these surfaces also have a direct access into the body. And a lot of them, for example, with IVs, you've got direct access into the bloodstream. And that then leads to bloodstream infections. And so it's this kind of dual play of actually, the device itself being a nice surface for bacteria to grow on, but also the fact that then you've got this direct access into the body that then makes these infections so problematic. So what we're doing at Zonova to tackle that is building infection control into the devices themselves. So we've developed a novel additive, think of it as like a magic powder, if you will, that we're dropping into the manufacturing process of these plastic devices. And then what you get out at the end of it is a plastic device that does exactly the same as it did before, delivers healthcare exactly the same way, but it's just got this antimicrobial protection around it that actively fights off those infections.
Amazing. And I think for most people listening, you probably don't think about these things. When you get sick, when you go to hospital, all of those things, or family members, you're not thinking about all of the processes and the systems and the kit around you. How did you come up with the concept, the idea? How did you guys, say, this is a problem, we know how to fix it, this is what we're going to do?
Yeah, so my background, my PhD was in antimicrobial materials, and that was a bit of a sidestep actually. I wasn't really supposed to be doing that, but I did a literature review and I just got completely sidetracked and obsessed with hospital-acquired infections. The one that I focused on in my PhD was ventilator-associated pneumonia. So you've got an endotracheal tube that sort of sits here, attached to the ventilator, and in critical care, that's how patients are kept alive, and it's breathing for you. And yeah, I'd spoken to a critical care consultant and he said that he thought it was his leading cause of death in his unit. But you're completely right in what you said before. I think, medical devices are, the core infrastructure to the healthcare that we deliver, but they're a little bit of, I would say, the unsung heroes. And that, we always talk about, what drugs are you getting, or the specific treatment type, but actually what's delivering that treatment is often forgotten about, but, incredibly important. So yeah, I think what we're really trying to do is we don't want to disrupt clinical workflow. We want to make this as easy as possible to embed into the way that hospitals work. And yeah, so that's what we're aiming for, and what we think we have achieved and will hope to achieve over the next few years and getting it into hospitals.
Fantastic. So you had this idea, you did your PhD. How do you then go from having the idea to turning it into an MVP, starting a business, all of that kind of
Yeah.
fun stuff of becoming a founder?
So yeah, so the very long story short of my PhD was that what I developed, I worked on creating an antimicrobial endotracheal tube. What I developed was not commercially viable at all. What we were using to make it was incredibly unstable, super expensive. Like it would just never work in the real world, especially given that these types of devices are often, very high volume, low margins. And so when I finished my PhD, I thought, right, I'm still very much obsessed with this problem, but there's got to be a better way to solve it, because it needs to scale, and it also needs to be affordable, and it needs to really ideally not change the workflow. It needs to be able to drop in as seamlessly as possible, to the existing manufacturing processes, in my mind anyway, because I think at the moment there's a lot of coating technologies out there, but the addition of that extra process, it increases the costs is the number one issue for that.
Great, fantastic. And so when you started to kind of put the company together, who did you kind of call on to support you in this journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I first started Zonova, the first year was actually year and a half ish was bootstrapped in my spare bedroom. One of my first advisors, I think, actually was from Angel Academy. So when we started trying to fundraise, we had a few calls with Angel Academy, and actually my entire pre-seed round, it was we didn't actually get through to the end. We just got into the screening call, but there was enough interest from there, that they became our first pre-seed round, and then became, advisors. Same with Animal Health Angels, then became our advisors, and even board members. And then on the side of that as well, I've got my co-founder and Carla Southworth, who started off as an advisor and then became a co-founder a little bit later on in the journey. But yeah, she's been absolutely there from the beginning, and her background is NHS healthcare project management, and so she brings a really different perspective to this.
Fantastic. So in the UK, for those listeners, we have the NHS. We're very blessed to have the NHS. But we know they never have any money. Um, this is the reality of the free healthcare system, which is so important and essential for our business. What is your kind of go-to market for Zonova? What is your vision as to who you're going after, who your target audience is? Share with us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so for us, it is all about scale and impact. We're incredibly, we're an impact-driven company. And so to have the biggest impact, we need to reach the biggest scale. So working back from that, we have decided that a licensing-led business model works the best for us. What that means is that we're working with different manufacturers all around the world to embed our technology into their existing product lines, and then it gets distributed through their normal distribution channels. At the moment, I would say the key areas that we're focused on are UK, US, and EU. And yeah, those are our priorities at the moment. But there are other conversations in the works that we're hoping that this will definitely be on a global scale over the next 5 years.
Fantastic. So, how do you plan to kind of dig into those manufacturers? What's your kind of approach with them? Do you have a salesperson? Is it you guys kind of, hitting the phones, the emails, all of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so it was primarily founder-led, so driven by me over the last couple of years. But we have been fortunate enough to also bring on a CCO, so fractional CCO, Deborah Lee. She's absolutely incredible. And so she's very much helping and supporting the commercialization of Zonova products through those conversations with the manufacturers that we're having at the moment. There's been a little bit of a mix, actually. We've had a lot of warm introductions through advisors and investors in Zonova. We've also had outreach to our website from companies, which has been really awesome. And then the other one is conferences, I think. Really targeting the right conferences and also the right accelerators. So one thing that we are currently in the middle of is the Medtech Innovator Accelerator. It's based out in the US, and they have strategic on board sponsoring the program. And so that's been an incredible resource for us.
Fantastic. And so with the team that you've got, you've got this incredible seed funding. What are the kind of short-term plans for investing and kind of taking your next steps?
Yeah, I think that the big ones are in increasing commercial capacity, really trying to move these deals forward, product development forward, the manufacturer suitability and all of that. And all of that goes to, generating our first revenue. That's target number one, as I'm sure is for a lot of medtech and life sciences companies that don't see revenue for a really long time. So that's definitely target number one for us and priority number one. And to do that, we obviously have to build out our team as well, and that comprises of both commercial and operational and also the R&D team. So we've got 2 roles that are currently being onboarded. And we're super excited about that, and also expanding the lab as well. So
Amazing.
we've got a lot going on.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine. And if you're kind of looking back the last 12 months, and I think I know what you're going to say, what would you say has been the biggest challenge for you guys and you personally?
Yeah, it was definitely the fundraising. I think, yeah, I don't, I mean, does anybody I don't know if anybody really enjoys fundraising. The way that I kind of try to tell my friends and family about it who aren't in the startup world, because it's such a difficult process to kind of explain, is that if you think about the worst exam or the worst interview that you've ever had, and you're just doing that all day, every day for about a year, uh, that's kind of what it feels like, because it's all for the good. And even the due diligence process, we've found the due diligence process is incredibly helpful, and we've generated our own documents as a result of that, and it's highlighted gaps that we need to work on. So it is all incredibly helpful, but I think there is such a thing as just fatigue from constantly, pitching and answering questions. So yeah, I think it was incredibly difficult, but absolutely worth it.
Absolutely, especially, after those months of, the grind and the pitching. What was the worst moment in that journey where you just were like, do I give up? Do we keep going?
We had, I mean, there were definitely a few of them, but I think the biggest one was we'd had a site visit from a potential lead, um, and we just left it. Collar and I looked at each other and were like, what just happened? What was that? And it was just really weird from like, this one of these people, were on the phone basically the entire time. It, there was a question asked about children, which obviously as female founders, it it it's the cliche, if you will, isn't it? And then there was a suggestion that we needed a co-founder that was older and male. And after that, I like got I think got home, I had my partner, I think we were driving to the shops or something, just had like a big breakdown. Just like, what is going on? And I think, the way that fundraising, typically works is that, you've obviously got the lead, everybody follows on from that. And so in that moment, it very much felt like, okay, this obviously isn't a goer, this isn't going to work. And it just felt, I think we'd been speaking to them for like 6 months or something. It was a really long
Mm,
build up because we'd met them, at
mm,
a conference pitch like a very long time prior. And so, yeah, that was definitely the point where, I definitely had to take a week and then pick myself back up again. But, I think the support, this is why it's so important to have those, support systems around you. So, I think, my chair, Verity Baldry, has been a huge part of that. And as were, my investors as well. I'd sent obviously like a voice note update to, board members and, key investors that like, hey, this lead investor isn't going to work out. And he called me immediately and he was like, are you okay? You sound really down. And, I think just having people like that around you is so important, during those times, that are really supportive and they're not just, focused on the outcome. But yeah, so it definitely all worked out the way it was supposed to. I dread to think where we would have been if we had gone ahead with that and taken the money and, moved forward. Luckily we didn't, and it all worked out for the best. But yeah, it's definitely tough out there. And I know everybody has their own experiences on it as well. It's not just, female founders.
yeah, I think often we speak about the funding process on this show, and we've had lots of women, female founders coming on the show talking about their challenges. And some people have kind of said it's been easier, and others have been very clear and have had very similar experiences to yourself. And I wonder, the men that we speak with on the show, they sometimes have similar struggles. Raising is tough. Like, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter who you are. It helps if you have certain connections, of course. But I think there is that added extra layer where women are not still frustratingly not taken as seriously, and are still expected to have a male counterpart, somebody older, and all of these things. And not everybody is in this mindset. And I think a lot of the people listening to the show would be as outraged as you and I and all of your support network were at that behavior. I mean, to mention families, I'd say the majority of the founders on this show have got families. And that still has not stopped them, male or female. And it's also irrelevant to the funding process. It's irrelevant. It's not going to stop you from building an organization. So I think there's probably just as much as myself, there's probably plenty of other people that are feeling frustrated by that. But what were the highlights of the process? I know ultimately you ended up with an incredible investment round, and you've got some great supporters. But what were the highlights of the last 12 months for you?
for me, it's always the people that I get to meet. I always say that, if I had just carried on in science, and, was working at a lab bench or something like that, I would not have met half of even a handful of like the incredible people that I've come across. And I think it just really is inspiring and pushes you forward as well, because it just, opens up the opportunities, and it's like, oh, okay, well, if they're doing this really cool thing, it just kind of gives you a little bit more confidence as well, because it's like, okay, they're doing it. That means therefore I should be able to do it. And yeah, it's such a supportive community, I think, in general, the startup community, and the medtech community as well. And yeah, I think just being a part of that is definitely one of my big highlights. And yeah, I do love it all. Bar the fundraising, I do love it all.
Absolutely.
Unless
Did
it's
you always
very
want to
simple.
be a founder? Did it just kind of happen, or was this, a long-term kind of vision for you?
I think underlying, I think I've always wanted. I don't think I even knew of the word founder or the context of founder startup before, like, very late in my PhD. There's a bit of a side story here where I ended up in a shipping container for a year of my PhD. And it just so happens that the shipping container where these labs were, there were loads of startups there. And I think that was the first exposure that I had to it. Before that, I knew about entrepreneurship, but I don't think I'd really understood like the startup world of what being a founder was. I think I knew of entrepreneurship as the typical way of like setting up a small business or like a consultancy and that type of stuff. So I think it's definitely always been on my radar. And I did business GCSE and I absolutely loved that. And we set up this like little milkshake stand, as part of like the modules and whatnot. But yeah, I think it was like a little bit of falling into it, but also I think this is absolutely where I'm supposed to be. But yeah, after my PhD, it was very much a decision of like, right, I'm going to try and give this a go, because if I don't give it a go now, then it's going to get significantly harder too. Because I think naturally, I think I'm way more comfortable with taking risks now than I was a few years ago. I think at the beginning of this, I think I was quite typically risk averse, just because I've not really ever had the exposure or seen anybody do it. So yeah, I kind of thought, right, let's just give it a go, see what happens. Put my all into it. The first year and a half, I was working a few different part-time jobs to, obviously like make sure that I could pay bills, but also run Zonova, to the maximum that I could. And then, yeah, I was really fortunate that we managed to close our pre-seed in June 2024. And then that allowed me to work on it full time. And yeah, can't imagine doing anything else now. So yeah, feel very fortunate to have found something that I'm super passionate about so early on in life.
And that doesn't feel like work at the end of the day, does it? Because you just love it so much.
Exactly. Yeah, no, don't get me wrong. I am, very much exhausted and all the typical things that a founder will be. But yeah, I just, there is absolutely no other job that would, get me out of bed in the morning the way that this does, for sure.
Fantastic. So if you could go back in time to the beginning of your kind of founder journey, or even, just 12 months, 18 months ago, what advice would you give yourself?
Ooh, I'm going to go with the cliche of trust your gut. I think it's so silly, but actually, I think, especially when it's your first time doing this, there have been so many occasions where I've second guessed myself, and luckily I've been able to you know, bounce those thoughts off of other people who have then either been like, no, yeah, that sounds, they've either confirmed or denied, my thinking. But I would say a lot of the time there's not really much else to go off of, and that it's an instinct and it's there for a reason. So in the absence of anything else, trust your gut.
I like it. I like it. Would you do anything differently if you could go back in time? Would you change anything on the journey? Apart from not talking to that investor that was
Being
quite
a man in
rude.
general, no. No, you know what? I think even, the mistakes that we've made or things that have been harder than they probably should have been, it's all been a learning. And I'm very much somebody who learns by being kind of thrown into it. I think if you told me it, I'd probably still have to learn it. So yeah, honestly, nothing that I would change outside of maybe the wider world, what we're operating in. But you know what? I think if you can raise under these conditions and in really hard sectors, then it just goes to show that actually what you're building is just absolutely incredible. And I'm going to wave that flag for Zonova. So yeah.
And to be honest, you're waving the flag for so many different things, female founders, medtech in general, the fact that you're seemingly really focused on making the world a better place, because that's what it comes down to. I know
Yeah.
business has to make money and all that kind of good stuff, but it's interesting. A lot of the women that I speak with that are founders, their vision comes from wanting to make the world a better place in whatever capacity, with whatever their tech is doing. And I think that's really, really admirable and really interesting. So the next 12 months, because as everybody knows, I like to catch back up with founders in about a year's time. I'd love to hear from you what your vision is, what you'd like to achieve in the next 12 months.
Yeah, so I suppose where we're at right now is we've spent a lot of time building the groundwork and laying the foundations for, our intellectual property of our, of our technology. And so I think in the next 12 months, it really is all about commercialization for us. We've got a number of different conversations going on with manufacturers across vascular access devices being a key market for us. So that includes sort of like peripheral IV catheters, central venous catheters, ports, etc. And the big one for us in that is that, if you get an infection in one of those, it leads to bloodstream infections and then sepsis, which, I think everybody knows, of the severity of sepsis. So, I think working towards getting those deals progressing through co-development and licensing. And then we've got a few other deals as well in terms of women's health for pessaries and also in the urology space too. So yeah, very much all about moving the needle and progressing those conversations and really answering the technical questions that they need to get comfortable with embedding our technology into their manufacturing processes so that we can ultimately get this through the regulatory approvals that are required and get it onto the market.
Super exciting. Well, it's not like you can put your feet up and relax and enjoy yourselves. I'm sure, the next 12 months are going to be, just as hard work, but just as rewarding for you and the team.
It's very much like, I think I'd kind of forgotten it actually. After closing the pre-seed, you think it's going to be this moment of like celebration, and obviously it is. But very soon after, like a millisecond afterwards, it's then the weight of like, oh my gosh, these people have trusted us with their, hard-earned cash to, build this incredible company that's going to help millions of people and also make their money at the end of it. And the weight of that is quite a lot. So I think, exactly the same thing happened on the closing of the seed. It was like, oh, I'm really happy. But there's a lot of responsibility now. So yeah, absolutely. The next 12 months, we will not be slowing down. If anything, we'll be going even faster. But the resources that we have access to now, it's just completely changed the game for us. And the backing from, our funds and Athena Capital as lead of this round. Yeah, watch this space, and I'm very excited to catch up with you in a year's time and see where we're at.
We will watch this space, and I'm excited to watch the continued journey. Honestly, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today. And, congratulations again. You guys are doing amazing stuff. I'm always in awe of stuff I don't understand, and things that are making a real difference to people's lives. So keep doing what you're doing. And yeah, I would love to speak with you in 12 months' time.
Thank you, Natalie. I really, really appreciate it.
That's it for this episode of Tech Startup Stories. Have a story you'd like us to share or a topic you'd want to cover? Reach out and we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, take care.